What is up, you beautiful happy hustlers out there? I want to talk about FQ tonight, aka Failure Quotient. Now, sometimes you win, yes, but sometimes you learn. And that is a quote by John C. Maxwell. And I love that quote because there's always an opportunity for you out there to turn your failure into fertilizer. And that's something that I really pride myself on, is actually learning from my mistakes and turning those mistakes and those failures into fertilizer. And FQ is a measurement of someone's ability to fail intelligently. And I want to dive in this episode of the Happy Hustle podcast all about FQ and how to actually fail intelligently. And there's one thing that I want everyone to think about right now, and that is your failure resume. What is on your failure resume? Before we dive into FQ, I wanted you to think about some of your greatest failures and think about what you can actually learn from those failures, because that, my friends, is how you grow. That is how you continue to adapt and evolve. And that is how you learn to not repeat those same failures and mistakes. So think about right now, one of those lessons, one of those failures that you can learn from. I know for me, I started a company. It was called Booze Bros with my brother, business partner and best friend. And we basically started this company with purity in our hearts to really solve the dilemma that caused one of our friends to lose his life in that second beer run. He was leaving a party and he went for a second beer run. And basically, he got in a car accident and died. Actually, that sparked this idea to, hey, why don't you just deliver booze? And this was before Uber, before any of it. We were just fresh out of high school, coming into college, and we wanted to start this company to really help eliminate those second beer runs right after the party started. So we created this whole, business, and then it turned into not only delivery service, but how to empower the inner bartender in you, and created these unique libation, aka drink boxes. And it came to your door, and then it had a QR code, and it showed you how to make an old fashioned and a Manhattan. And it had all the ingredients you needed to make really cool cocktails, and empowered you and the inner bartender in you, and also decreased that beer run or that alcohol run. Long story short, we failed epically with that business. We really did learn a ton. We realized, it's against the law to transport alcohol across state lines, aka ship alcohol, without paying proper taxes. And the ATF was coming down on us. And then we got into some issues at Florida State University of Florida football game where we were tailgating, and we ended up having to dump out all our booze and getting huge fines. And it was really embarrassing. And, the whole thing, we learned so many lessons. And my point is, from that business and that failure of Booze Bros, now there's a company I just saw called Drizzly that just got acquired by Uber for multiple millions and millions of dollars. So we were on the right track with that business even before it was, a real thing. However, the point is, we pivoted, we learned from those mistakes, and we applied those lessons now to our lives moving forward. And I want you to do the same. I want you to think about what was some of your greatest failures. Write them down. If you're not driving, or if you're not, doing something in the gym, working out, and you got your journal nearby or your computer, think about some of your greatest failures. And we call this the failure resume, right? Write down what that failure was and write down what you learned from it. Okay. This is an important part of learning and growing. You have to be able to reflect, right? If you don't reflect on what those failures were, and you don't actually take the time to extract the lesson, you'll find yourself oftentimes repeating them. You're going to repeat those failures until you learn that lesson. So that's why I want you to think of your failure resume. Put down minimum 5 to 10 things that you failed at, right? I know Booze Bros is one of them for me. I know I failed at a relationship. I can learn from that too. I know I failed at, Little League. We didn't win the championship. I got runner up. I can tell you why. I got flustered. I was pitching, and I basically just threw walks, balls, which turned into walks. And we didn't win the championship because I pitched bad because I was in my own head. And, we can learn from all these failures, right? And I want you to think about what's on your failure resume. Now, I want you to take it a step further, and I want you to identify sum of your FQ, right? And I want to get into these characteristics of an FQ, a failure quotient, right? You've heard of IQ, right? Your intelligence quotient, right? You've heard of emotional quotient, maybe. I don't even know if I'm saying that word properly, quotient, but you've heard of IQ, I'm sure of it. You've heard of probably EQ, where, it's like how emotionally adept you are and how empathetic. Now I want you to think about your FQ. Now, these are 8 characteristics. I read this recently on an article from Life Optimizer, and I thought it was really good, lifeoptimizer.org. However, I want to run through these 8 characteristics of people with high FQ. Now, number 1 is they experiment a lot. So think about, right now, if you actually experiment a lot, do you take chances? Do you go beyond your comfort zone and try something new? You will experience failures if you do this. So you have to think about trying something new and experimenting. And that is how you can push past your boundaries. And that is one characteristic of someone with high FQ. Number 2, they maintain their enthusiasm in the face of failures, right? Success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm, as Winston Churchill says, right? So you have to maintain that enthusiasm. You have to, continue to get up and be hungry and happy hustle, even if you fail, right? People with someone with high FQ can maintain that enthusiasm in the face of adversity, in the face of failures. That's really one of the things that makes people actually successful or unsuccessful, is their ability to maintain that enthusiasm. So think about it for you right now. Are you maintaining that enthusiasm even if the day is dragging out a little bit, or if it's not going as planned? Do you keep pushing on, right? That's important. The third characteristic of people with high FQ is they have a long-term vision, right? And this is something I think 9 times out of 10 when I talk to people, they're not super crystal clear on their long-term vision. And I want you to be super crystal clear on your long-term vision, right? Someone with a high FQ doesn't just fail randomly, right? They actually are taking calculated risks. They have their long-term vision. They know what they're attempting to do. And then they have the grit and the passion and the perseverance for those long-term goals, okay? And this is how they can maintain that enthusiasm in the face of failures, because they know at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the road, at the top of the mountain, what is there for them, because they're clear on their vision. Okay. Number 4, they choose the right experiments to do, right? This plays into what we were just talking about, having that vision. But someone with high FQ knows that their resources are limited, aka time, very limited, your most precious commodity, making sure that you use your time and your resources, right? This is very important, making sure that you are prioritizing what experiments to do, what risks to take. So when you do fail, you can learn, and actually it'll bring you closer to your end goal and vision. Okay. Number 5, they fail fast and they fail cheap, right? Again, this is because your resources are limited. Google X actually uses the mantra, fail fast and fail cheap, right? Don't sink a bunch of money and a bunch of time and a bunch of energy into something that's still unproven, right? Actually put forth the energy and the resources enough to validate the idea, yes, but then see if it's actually statistically significant, if you can actually persevere with that idea and it'll actually get you the ROI on your time and investment, okay? Fail fast and fail cheap. One of the ways you could do this right now is, instead of going out there and trying to create a course, selling your knowledge, pre-sell your course. Right? Genius. I'm telling you, I've done this. I pre-sold my modeling course back in the day when I had this elaborate modeling course before I even, had it created. I've done this with my, happy hustle programs. I've done this with biohacking programs. I've done this where you pre-sell. And that way you can fail fast and cheap. You don't spend a whole bunch of time and energy and money building something that people don't want. Okay. Number 6, they learn as much as possible from each failure, right? That goes back to the failure resume, learning from your actual failures. But failure is going to happen, right? It's just it's a necessary beast of life. Making sure that you're learning from the opportunity and you can extract those many lessons as possible is the key there, okay? Number 7 characteristic of people with high FQ, failure quotient, they iterate to awesomeness, right? And this one is funny, but basically for someone with a high FQ, iteration is their friend, right? You continue to evolve. They iterate to awesomeness by becoming better and better with each attempt. Maybe your first version of your product or service or course or book is not the end result, but you keep iterating and making it its best version possible. And number 8 characteristic, they pivot if necessary, right? There's times, yes, there is, when failure shows that they are moving in the wrong direction, right? It showed me with Booze Bros that I was moving in the wrong direction. There was times with my, feedback or my tech startup, I was moving in the wrong direction. We got the 7-figure VC funding deal, but we were burning out. We burned ourselves out. We weren't passionate about it. So we pivoted, right? Don't get trapped by the sunk cost fallacy, right? You got to think about Jeff Bezos's mantra, which is be stubborn on vision, but flexible on details, right? You know your long-term vision, but you can be stubborn on the vision, but flexible on the details. So those are the 8 characteristics of someone with high FQ. One more time. Number 1, they experiment a lot. Number 2, they maintain their enthusiasm in the face of failures. Number 3, they have a long-term vision. Number 4, they choose the right experiments to do. Number 5, they fail fast and they fail cheap. Number 6, they learn as much as possible from each failure. Number 7, they iterate to awesomeness. Number 8, they pivot if necessary. So I urge you to just figure out which one of those characteristics, if any, if all, are a part of your inner being, your repertoire. And if not, maybe start to adapt some of those high FQ characteristics so that you can learn from your mistakes and you can become a better version of yourself. That's what it's all about, baby. Happily hustling, right? That better version of ourselves. So I want you to think about what is your failure resume, write those 5 to 10 things out, and then adopt some of these characteristics into your inner being, because failure is fertilizer, my friends, and that is how we learn, that is how we grow, that is how we evolve. So think about your failures, learn from them, and just like John C. Maxwell says, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. All right, y'all, I hope you got some value from this one. If you did, share with a friend who might be failing or who maybe has failed in the past and wants to learn from their failures. I'm telling you, this stuff is valuable. We got to all learn from our failures. Now go out there and happy hustle your dream reality, all right? Full of passion, purpose, and positive impact. I'm out, y'all. Peace and love.